Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing a Happy Mail card where I did some no-line coloring using my distress inks. Now the stamp set that I'm using today is Sprinkling You With Love. This one was released a while back and actually it was my favorite set from the whole release, but I didn't get around to play with it. So today I'm catching up making this card. And first of all, I'm stamping these critters using antique linen onto some Aquarel paper. This is a really cheap one. It's from just the name of the store, so it's Schleiper. It's not everywhere, but it's just like a white brand. A really cheap paper, nothing fancy. I'm using some distress inks, as I said before, so I'm just smushing these inks down, and then I can use a paintbrush and use these colors. Now, what I always have on hand when I'm doing some no-line coloring using distress inks is, of course, water, but also paper towel to create a damp paintbrush. It has been a while again that I use my distress inks to do some no-line coloring. I'm using a number 0 paintbrush. This is a size where I'm really comfortable with. But you can use a bigger one for these images. You can use a smaller one. I'm not an expert in watercoloring. This is just the way that it works for me. And that is that I take a lot of the ink onto my paintbrush, barely any water on my paintbrush. I bring that ink to the edges of my image, and then I create a damp paintbrush, or in this case, using an Aquarel paper, I can use a bit of a weather paintbrush. I'm just dragging that color all over the image. So that's what I'm mostly doing. If the image is really big and I want some more color all around, I can also use a diluted version of the ink to get the color all over the image. Now I'm taking my time, and actually I'm trying to every time let all the layers dry before I add a second one on top of it, and you can keep adding layers until you're happy with the blend. Now I'm doing some similar coloring. My bunnies will be the same color, my bears are the same color, the clouds are the same color, just to keep it simple this way. And then the accessories, I will later on do some rainbow colors on to get a vibrant color everywhere. But just easy reference, I kept the critters sort of the same. So it's a really soft way of doing some no-line coloring. With distress inks, you can use several inks to stamp out your images. There are also no-line coloring inks. For example, Ink on 3 has one that I use all the time when I'm doing no-line coloring with Copics. It's just when I do no-line coloring with distress inks that I prefer stamping my images with distress inks as well, and therefore it's just important to have a light ink to stamp it out that is visible but still lighter than actually the colors that you want to use, like the antique linen. If you want to, you can of course also use another color. There is also the scattered straw. I think that is really light from distress inks, but there are many inks just in general that have a really light color. If it can handle water, then it works as well for this effect. So as you can see, I go back and forth quite a bit until I'm happy with the blend. I also noticed that when I get more towards my later images that I get used again to coloring with my distress ink, so it's a bit of a different result, the two bears for example, but I like them both. So it's all about getting used to. If you do this often, then of course that's not an issue, but I must admit that I was a bit rusty when I colored these images. So I'm going to skip the coloring of the other bunny and the bear because the principle is the same, but I'm going to show you all the accessories. Therefore, I took my favorite rainbow assortment of distress inks and I also smooshed them down on this mat from Waffle Flowers. You can also do this on an acrylic block, but I always prefer it to be on a white background so that you can really see the colors. If you want to, you can always put your paper towel or a piece of paper underneath your acrylic blocks, then you will also see the color very well. So like the bear and the bunnies, I am first adding the pigment of the ink without barely any water, and then I return having a damp paintbrush to move the ink around. And then I add more layers until I'm happy. And that's how I do it. Also for the other areas. Now for the umbrellas, I made sure to skip each time a part of the umbrella just to make sure that there wasn't any bleeding into the other color. So I skipped one, went one further, and then when everything was dry, I returned to fill up the empty space. And I hope that you see here that the way that I'm coloring stays the same on every part of every image. Adding the pigment, then dragging it out using a damp or minimal watered paintbrush, and then I continue like that. For the details of the critters, I am going to use a MICRON Fineliner later on, because I'm also going to stamp my sentiment with black and then some of the raindrops that you have as stamps in this set. So therefore I thought that it was a possibility to use black on the eyes and the mouth and all those things. If you don't want that, in previous videos as well, I just use the same ink, but not diluted, to add the eyes. So here I have my rainbow, and then I had to decide about the clothing of the bear that is holding the umbrella with the bunny on top. And I first started with pink, but it just seemed a bit off, so later on I went over it using some purple to darken it a bit more. I just thought that it was a bit too light with the pink, but you can still sort of see it from underneath the purple. It's not like I'm covering it completely. And again, I'm using those rainbow colors. It's going to be a really bright card, you know, it's subtle but a bright card. So here it just seemed, with the green being as light, that I needed a darker color on top. So I just went over it again. And that's the coloring. So I am going to add the details now using my MICRON Fineliner. This is the 005, a really thin one, which is really handy if you have tiny eyes and such on your critters. And then I first forgot to add the sticks of the umbrellas, but I went back in there to fix that. I'm also taking my time to get those details on there. I don't want to ruin anything at this point. And here I realized I didn't have the umbrella sticks, so that's fixed as well. And then I'm going to cut all of these images out using the matching dies. So for my background now, I'm going to create a slimline card. And therefore I have the large slimline with sliders from Fawn cut out of the same paper. This is also the Aquarel paper from Schleiper in my case here. I'm going to stamp out the sentiment in black, as I told you, as well as some of these raindrops. And then I'm going to ink blend some clouds on this background. So I used the images to really get everything in place. I made this card while my bigger Misty was broken. So I think you will see when I have my regular Misty replaced. Although I still have some cards I think that I need to share with you where I use my old one. But no, it's now still mid of June. I still don't have my new one. It's holed up in Milan and I don't know why. Well, sometimes, you know. Patience, my dear, patience. So I stamped this one out and now I'm also going to stamp it on the other places. I'm sorry. Again, using my black ink. And now I can start on the background. So for the background, I'm going to use the cloud stencil from My Favorite Things. A stencil that I use a lot. Like if I need to... Well, I like a lot of stencils, but the one that I use the most are definitely cloudy stencils from My Favorite Things, from Fawn, from several brands, actually. I know that when I buy stencils, especially cloud ones, I have a few that the boyfriend is like, why do you need another cloud stencil? Isn't one enough? And then we all say, no. Because all the clouds are different. Like the one from My Favorite Things that I'm using here is quite subtle, while the Fawn one, in my opinion, has some bigger clouds in there, some more varieties, and this one is really subtle. So I like it because my images are really soft as well with the no-line coloring with distress inks. So, and also I like combining the same brand. I must admit that. There are some fabulous brands out there and you can definitely combine a lot of products together. But if I can, I really notice that I prefer using My Favorite Things with My Favorite Things and Fawn with Fawn. So yeah, but you can combine it. Of course, you don't need... Well, now I'm going against my own decision making, but you don't need 5 cloudy stencils. And now I'm hoping that the boyfriend will not listen to this video. So here I'm going to add all the images. I'm using some thin foam squares and I'm completely covering the back of my critters just to make sure that while I'm mailing these cards of mine, that they won't be bulked or ruined by just the mail office, or, well, you never know. You never know. It is traveling all over the world from time to time, so securing everything very well. And then once this is all on there, I'm going to remove that purple tape. Normally I do it ahead of time. I don't know why I kept the purple tape on there and started adhering. I think it was just the excitement about the card almost being done. So it might be a bit unlogical, but it also works. And then it's just all about finishing this card. I am, however, keeping it as simple as possible, so I'm not going to add anything more. I still need to add this panel onto a card base, of course, but that will be it. There are many ways to embellish this card, but I think with the added raindrops with the stamping, I think it's more than enough. Also the rainbow, it's standing on its own. So I'm just leaving it like this. I hope that you like it as much as I do. And of course, I hope that you enjoyed this video and the coloring in it, because I know that it takes a bit longer than Copic coloring when I do this. Thank you all for stopping by. I really appreciate it. I hope that you have an amazing day left, and I will be back soon with some new crafty inspiration. Bye!